World War I broke out on August 1st, 1914, when Germany declared war on Russia and France mobilized. At 11 p.m. on August 4th, Great Britain ended speculation about her intentions by announcing that Germany's invasion of Belgium, a neutral country, could not stand. Great Britain and Germany went to war tonight, wrote the AP's Robert Collins from London, noting that all Europe is now in arms. The Triple Entente between Great Britain, France, and Russia would hold. The immediate source of the conflict was the June 28th assassination in Sarajevo of the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand by a Serbian nationalist. What might have remained a narrow dispute escalated throughout July as Austria delivered an ultimatum to Serbia, Russia warned Austria, Germany backed Austria, Austria declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized for war, and Germany declared war on Russia and France. The Associated Press had covered war before, but not since the Napoleonic Wars a century earlier had so many armies battled over so great an extent. This was the Great War, called the European War or the World War by contemporaries. 10 million combatants would die before it ended with Germany's defeat on November 11th, 1918. Its bloody battlegrounds, the Somme, Verdun, the Marne, and others, still epitomize apparently pointless human sacrifice. Those who survived the trenches of the Western Front believed civilization could never again sink so low. The greatest story of the era was also the most difficult to report. Very soon it became clear that news of military movements would be subject to rigorous and often capricious censorship. British censorship was unreasonably tight. It did not relax until officials realized that suppressing so much information about the war weakened the public support needed to wage it. Charles Klober, who headed the AP's news department in New York, expressed his exasperation in September 1914.
In endeavoring to report this war, we have faced an inexorable, unsystematized, and unequal censorship on all news sources abroad. This, added to the delays on the cable due to congestion, has caused us to labor under a condition of affairs almost indescribable.
When war came, AP sent reporters from New York and Washington to reinforce its seasoned foreign staff. Berlin bureau chief Seymour Beach-Conger, who had covered the Russo-Japanese War, accompanied the German and Austro-Hungarian forces into Belgium as they sought the French frontier. Roger Lewis and George A. Schreiner joined Ed Traus and Hendrik van Loon in Brussels to report the first battle of the war. Liège and its ring of 12 massive forts held out against German artillery until August 18th. Louvain fell August 27th. The accounts by Schreiner and Van Loon of the plight of Belgian civilians are credited with inspiring the American-Belgian relief drive. Robert Berry and Charles Thompson provided support to Paris bureau chief Elmer Roberts, who had been in Paris since 1911 and in London and Berlin before that. His writings, which were consulted by American General John J. Pershing, display his considerable insight. Such was Roberts' reputation for fairness that in 1915 he was asked by French Army headquarters to adjudicate the results of a bitterly fought battle, which the Germans were claiming to have won. In late April, French officials drove Roberts from Paris to the summit of Hartmannsweiler Kopf in the Vosges Mountains. As French soldiers cut down the pine forest in order to roof the trenches, Roberts made his observations.
I crawled, or rather entered, half-bent into the most advanced trench. The machine guns were set every 6 feet, each manned by 3 men. The colonel cautioned me to take a half-second glance at a time, as the Germans might at any moment begin a blast of firing. The lines were too close for either side to shell them without danger of shells falling into their own works. I saw enough to see that the French did in fact hold the entire mountain rib, the German lines trailing down the slope.
Back in Paris, Roberts wrote up his story, cabled it, and watched it clear the censor. Freedom from censorship had been his condition for serving as a neutral observer. The highly anticipated news of the arrival of the first American troops in France was broken by Stanley Prenesil and Philip M. Powers. Prenesil and 3 other reporters, accredited by the U.S. Navy, made the voyage to France in secret, sailing on June 14, 1917, from New York to Saint-Nazaire. On arrival, Admiral Albert Gleaves held up their dispatches, but when he released them, the telegraph office was closed. Undeterred, Prenticeau boarded a night train to Paris, checked in with Elmer Roberts, and cabled his story. The French censors sent it to London, where it was passed by Admiralty, but held until June 27th. At the same time, Powers cabled his story from Saint-Nazaire. Both stories, datelined "A Port in France," made the American papers by July 1st, a world beat. Elmer Roberts stayed on in Paris until his retirement in 1929. He was among the few American reporters to have seen firsthand the carnage of the Western Front. In a 1916 letter to Melville Stone proposing a story about war atrocities, he confided,
"There are terrible things about this war which have never yet been written, and this may be the beginning of tearing open the realities. While I am looking into this matter absolutely on its news basis for us, yet it seems to me that the cause of civilization may be served incidentally."